It's time for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football. Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Over 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 19th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 25 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Show with your hosts, Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry.
Welcome to what is perhaps the most important week of the fantasy preseason. National Draft Day on the horizon. It is now that the vast majority of the fantasy football world are preparing to build a squad for the upcoming 2017-2018 season. We're so happy you found your way here because we intend to get you off to a killer start on your way to a fantasy championship. By we, I mean me, Andy Hall, and my good friend and co-host, Brian Eikenberry. Brian.
Ooh, National Draft Day. I have drafted on National Draft Day for this will be the 7th consecutive year. I am a traditionalist. Everyone knows this when it comes to commissioning. And look, the third week of preseason is when we draft on Saturday, period. It will never change. It will always be this. So when the 2018 schedule dates are released, you can go out there and look at the preseason, and you can pretty much guess when we're going to be drafting 8 months in advance.
I'm looking forward to my first championship in your league this year, building on what was a very mediocre 2016, following catastrophe after week 1 with Keenan Allen, catastrophe after week, 5 with C.J. Anderson. My team just got killed by injuries last year. I start fresh with my keeper, David Johnson. I can't wait for Saturday, Brian. It's going to be so much fun.
I know. I am super stoked. For our draft, we've got some briskets going to get smoked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole day activity, and we just check out of life. Plus, you get the fight that night.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, forgot about that.
McGregor Mayweather.
Mm-hmm. Together, over 40 years of combined fantasy football experience. We've been through the battles. We've been in the trenches. We know what it takes to build a roster that'll help get you off to a strong start. But as we all know, Brian, draft day, as important as it is, it's only the beginning if you really want to bring home the hardware by season's end.
Hey, look, I'm going to win. This is what's going to happen. And I am going to give away most of my draft strategies here. It's going to happen. I am going to help. We've got 2 people last year that specifically reached out and said, you 100% won my league for me. And I'm going to look to do it again this year.
My coworker was one of those, I believe, that you're referring to. If not, that would make 3.
It's 3 now that I know of.
Yeah, my coworker won our work league. It was his first ever fantasy football experience. He let us guide him to his first championship in his inaugural season. No matter how you found Brian and I, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, on the radio at 1350 a.m. in Central Iowa, we thank you for investing in us, something that Brian and I definitely don't take for granted. You are the reason we're here. We are indebted to you. So that said, please don't hesitate to reach out to either of us if you need anything. We're on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, on Twitter at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at Ike FFB. That's IKEFFB. Another jam-packed 2-hour extravaganza this week. Lots of quality cram session stuff for your upcoming fantasy draft. We'll hold a Dynasty rookie mock. Got a segment entitled Goal Line Gold and Red Zone Radicals we think you'll find interesting later on. The pop quiz, of course. Another special guest scheduled to join here shortly, and so much more. But we begin, as we always do, with some headlines of fantasy note. And to be honest, not a lot of catastrophe this past week, Brian, but one big scare from Monday night was the hit laid on Giants wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, those early drafters probably had a pucker factor of 11, and that's, again, why you draft in week 3, because everyone's going to get these last couple of games out of the way. no one's playing week 4, so
yeah,
you're pretty good.
They say the full dress rehearsal for most NFL teams and players is the week 3 of the preseason.
Yep.
So we're going to get a good look at a lot of guys this coming week. But Odell Beckham Jr., it sounds like he could theoretically miss the first week of the season. Giants taking on Dallas. It could even extend out further. We don't know at this point. We do know it's not broken. He didn't tear anything, but it is looking like it could be a high ankle sprain, which is a little worrisome.
Yeah, if it is that high ankle sprain, that sucks bad, but I can't imagine he misses week 1 because of the Cowboys.
I actually tweeted that out. That's funny you say that
Yeah,
because that's
no way.
exactly what I said. I would be shocked if Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't play against the Cowboys in week 1.
Yeah.
The other big headline from this past week, wide receiver Anquan Baldwin has decided to retire less than 2 weeks after joining the Buffalo Bills in free agency. What a dumpster fire that team is turning out to be, at least on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and, it was no surprise. He kind of looked around and went, well, I'm no number 1 wide receiver. I'm out of here. Screw this.
Anquan Baldwin said, wait a minute, there's 3 of us and we're all slot guys?
Yeah.
What the hell?
I'm out of here. And you know what? LaShawn McCoy's next. They're going to get some draft picks out of him. I'll be surprised at the time this is airing if he's still a Bill.
I read a very interesting take somebody put out on Twitter, wrote a column and tweeted it out. I retweeted it, thought it was fascinating that perhaps LaShawn McCoy might be shopped somewhere. We'll see. ESPN reporting that Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell should return to the team and end his holdout following Pittsburgh's 3rd preseason game this week. That actually was just answered on Twitter. Some rando tweeted at Le'Veon Bell, and he responded and said he'll be on the field September 1. So there's your answer to that question. He's not missing that payday, that's for sure. Staying in Steel Town, the handcuff to own, at least for now, is not the rookie James Conner. It is actually Fitzgerald Toussaint, Brian.
Yeah.
Not that I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Jags quarterback Blake Bortles struggled mightily in the team's 2nd preseason game. There's a very real possibility that Chad Henne earned serious consideration for the starting role by default.
My inside sources point to me that Henne is the starting quarterback.
How about that? Brian's got some insiders down in Jacksonville. Eagles running back LeGarrette Blount reportedly has struggled both on and off the field. He hasn't performed well, of course. We've seen that with our eyes. Apparently, he's dealing with some weight issues, a la Eddie Lacy, too. LeGarrette Blount, some steam out there, I guess, that LeGarrette Blount might not even make the team. I don't believe that.
I do, actually.
No.
Look, if you're not conditioned, you can't do anything, and they're paying him a whole lot of money that's going to come due real soon. And any indication that Wendell Smallwood's going to be the guy, then look, realistically, Blount doesn't fit in that offense.
It's true.
They need a versatile back that can run around. Blount ain't that guy. Blount's in between the tackles.
Yeah, they've been looking for their Brian Westbrook for a long
They
time.
have.
Some suggestions, as you just alluded to, that Wendell Smallwood may end up be the Eagles' starting running back come week 1. We'll see. Eagles wide receiver coach Mike Groh believes Alshon Jeffrey is behind a bit mentally after missing time early in camp. I've got all kinds of concerns about that passing game, including Alshon Jeffrey, who's always an injury risk. Trevor Siemian has been named the Denver starting quarterback going forward, and I guess that's okay news for Emmanuel Sanders and for Demaryius Thomas, both of whom performed just fine with Trevor Siemian under center last year. Will Jamal Charles make the team is a question many Broncos fans are wondering as we head into week 3 here. At least according to reports, this is sort of a make or break week for him in Denver. Seattle running back CJ Prosise, he tweaked a groin in warmups last weekend. It doesn't sound like it's too serious, but serious enough to keep him out of week 3. So, yay, we get to take more look at Eddie Lacy and Thomas Rawls and maybe Christopher Carson as well if we're lucky. From the Pump the Brakes files, Texans head coach Bill O'Brien says rookie running back Deontay Foreman has a lot of work to do in reference to his potential for playing time early on. I'm not surprised to hear that, though.
No, not at all.
Bill O'Brien, I mean, he's that guy, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. Earn it.
Yeah. Hearing similar things out of Kansas City with quarterback Patrick Mahomes, Cleveland with quarterback Deshaun Kaiser, even Tampa with tight end O.J. Howard. To think of those 3, though, Deshaun Kaiser is actually the guy who has a real chance to be a starting quarterback sooner than later in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think so. Look, he's walking into the best possible situation to compete for a starting job because everybody else sucks.
From the Don't Overreact to Preseason Football files, a reporter for the Baltimore Sun sees Buck Allen as the Ravens' most productive running back through 2 preseason games. I had forgotten he was on the roster, and for that matter, Lorenzo Taliaferro is apparently still a Raven.
I didn't know Taliaferro was.
How about that? I'm sorry. How about that?
How about that?
Sorry.
But I would not. I'm not getting involved with any Baltimore running backs in a non-PPR format.
At least you don't have to worry about Dixon, who's out for the year.
Yep.
But then you've got Terrence West, who's the incumbent, and then you've got Danny Woodhead, who I know you're not a fan, but I love him in PPR, so there is that. Speaking of PPR guys and Tampa Bay, Charles Sims is a guy you should expect to handle much of the third down and pass catching work this season. Actually, that's no big surprise. Charles Sims has been that guy ever since he was signed in Tampa.
He's always been there.
And speaking of Danny Woodhead, he's nursing an injured hamstring, but reports yesterday suggest that he's actually going to play in Baltimore's Week 3 preseason game, so it couldn't have been all too terribly bad. But I suppose a guy like Danny Woodhead, you got to keep him healthy. He's had a little bit of trouble with that the past few seasons. When the guy's good, though, he is great. We've seen his ceiling. It's top 5 at the running back position in PPR, Brian Eikenberry.
Yeah, hold your breath.
Woodhead till I'm dead right here.
I guess so.
Stick around. We got a lot of ground to cover in this episode of the show. But next, we have a very special guest, a local fantasy legend here in Central Iowa. Biff Hammer will be my special guest on the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. We are back and joined by a very special guest, a Goliath among Davids in the fantasy realm, who has been competing at a very high level for over 30 years. He is the former commissioner of the Iowa's longest-running unit, the League of All Leagues, a good friend, an elite fantasy mind, and a hell of a great guy, Biff Hammer.
Just for the record, I would like it known that I am now Commissioner Emeritus of the League of All Leagues, sir. So,
an honorary title, which you have no doubt earned.
Goliath. I like that.
A Goliath among Davids.
Among Davids.
You like that?
Well, I don't like what happened to Goliath, but, to start out just as a tag, that's pretty good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Let's give our listeners a little history before diving into some intriguing intel. League of All Leagues was made famous by ESPN's Matthew Berry. Tell me that story.
When he was putting together his book, Fantasy Life, I think that's what it was called. He asked for submissions on Twitter of pictures of league trophies, and one of our guys from the League of All Leagues sent ours in, which is a converted old farming milk can with a fantasy football player festooned upon the top of it. It looks pretty cool. It looks a lot like the Stanley Cup. I mean, we painted it silver. We have panels that go on every year for the winner. Matthew Berry liked it, so he put it in his book. And that kind of got us some national pub for, I don't know if it was the first time or second time, but, the League of All Leagues is now out there.
And how many years has this league been running now?
This will be year 29.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I hear all the time, Biff, people that complain of, they get into a league with guys that they lose interest over time. They don't run their teams anymore. Mm-hmm. Without giving away any secret sauce, how is it exactly that you've been able to keep this going for as long as it's been going?
Friendship.
Yeah.
That's why it started. And I'm not going to lie to you. There's only 2 of the original members left after 29 years. I mean, people move away. People do lose interest. That's just a fact of life, brother. But we still have, if you ask me now how many guys have been in the League of All Leagues for 15 years, I would say of the 12, probably 8.
There you go.
The core remains, and yes, it's in pursuit of the cup. That is, we're a competitive lot of guys. But it's never come at the expense of friendship. And when we have our draft, we don't get together. Well, first of all, we sure as hell don't do it online.
Mm-hmm.
We do it in person.
I love that.
And we make a weekend of it. Guys show up Friday morning, and they leave Sunday morning. They golf, they talk, they drink, they eat. We go places, we do things. It's just a summit meeting of men who love football.
You know what's really sad?
What?
Is that there's a generation of fantasy players that maybe have only been around for, 5 years or less, and they don't understand that. They don't get the fact that leagues still exist. They only heard old tales of guys that would actually get together in a room and actually like being in a room together and draft.
And you hit on something there that I think is worth talking about.
Yeah.
This, I'll just label it the millennial, like everybody else does.
Absolutely.
they've grown up without a romanticism of sport. It's always been a means to an end. Why do I join a fantasy league? To win. Why do I cheer for my team? To win. There's, at my advanced age now, I collect. Well, you've seen some of my entourage. I have my man cave is basically a testimony to the 1970s.
Absolutely.
Football, baseball, basketball. I will always be in love with that era, and even the 80s for that matter. But now, kind of just moving forward with this argument, these guys don't understand that this can be so much more than just beating your buddy.
Right.
This can be a deal where and I'll give you a specific example. This can be a deal where one of the guys in your league is getting married in Las Vegas. And 3 weeks before they're supposed to fly out and get married, someone breaks into his house, steals everything he has, including everything for the wedding, all the money for the wedding. He kept it in the house. So think of that what you will. But I don't know how it started. I know I didn't start it. But the League of All League members rounded up all the money they could, gave it to this guy, said, go have fun.
So that really happened.
That truly happened.
Holy hell.
That truly happened.
I couldn't imagine.
And we sent him on his way to Vegas and to get married and have a good time, because otherwise the whole thing would have been blown up, and we just weren't going to let that happen, because even though we have this competition and this rivalry that goes 1 through 12, when the chips are down, I mean, these are guys you live and die with. Mm-hmm. And when they're hurting, you help them.
A few years ago, you decided to launch a satellite league in which, full disclosure, I happen to be fortunate enough to compete in. It's the Little Kids Table, in which, by the way, Biff happens to be the defending champion. Wanted to give you some credit there.
Thank you.
I've been close twice now, but haven't reached the pinnacle.
You are... What's the best runner-up I can think of in baseball?
Oh, boy.
You're the best runner-up ever, Andy Hall.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Totally failed at that. So.
I'm excited to at least be a part of something that's connected to something of prestige like the League of All Leagues, and that's obviously the Prestige being the longest-running fantasy league in all of Iowa, and some great fantasy minds, yourself included. But to have opened it up to some more friends and begun new friendships in that respect, right, with the Little Kids Table is something I really appreciate. So
the waiting list for the League of All Leagues is longer than Packers season ticket holders, So, and you and I, through years of going back and forth and me telling you, geez, dude, no, you're not getting in unless somebody dies. Mm-hmm. And then there were 5 or 6 other guys also saying the same thing, and I thought, let's just do another one, because these guys are all good guys too.
Yes.
I can have the same mojo going over here that I have with the League of All Leagues. And the funny thing is, the way the league got named was that one of the League of All Leagues guys who knew what I was going to do, he goes, so did you get that Little Kids Table league put together yet? And so it was born.
It's exactly what we are. Although I'm still going to push for, I think the champion should get an automatic entry into the League of All Leagues, and whoever is the last place, the toilet bowl winner of the League of All Leagues, should get relegated back to the Little Kids Table. But we'll have that argument another time.
Perhaps not coincidentally, that's why I stepped down as commissioner, so I didn't have to make that choice.
Oh, there you go. Biff, fantasy drafts are happening all over the place in the next couple of weeks. What are some of the most important ways in which you personally prepare when it comes to drafting a squad? Because I would call you unconventional.
Oh, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
First of all, I only play in keeper leagues. Mm-hmm. I don't draft fresh every year. Usually it's a core of 3 guys. And when you try and get a quarterback, a running back, and a receiver, that just makes sense. I do believe that if you don't have an elite quarterback, if you don't have a Rodgers or a Brady, or a Breeze, mm-hmm, I think you're on your back. You're in wrestleback mode. You're at state and you're trying to get up on the platform. Mm-hmm. So your running backs and receivers, I don't go for that. If I don't have Breeze or Rodgers or Brady, I'm all running back, wide receiver, and that makes sense to a lot of people. I know that. I'm not saying anything here that's out of the realm. But as you go through the draft and establish yourself, for example, I did a draft last weekend. I had the 3rd pick in the draft. Guy took my dude at number 2. Mm. This guy had a quarterback and 2 running backs. I knew what he was going to do, right?
Should take a
What
receiver.
does he do? What does he do with the 2nd pick in the draft?
What do you take?
Takes the running back I wanted.
So now he's got 3.
Yeah,
when he can only start
but
2.
you gotta go on the fly. You know this, Andy. How many drafts have blown up on you?
Thousands.
But you have to stay true to what year to year sustains you. If you're a winner, if you're a consistent winner, it's about minimizing risk. You know, the Matthew Berry philosophy. It's also about, to me, if you don't watch college football, and if you don't watch guys like Joe Mixon from his freshman year to his sophomore year to his junior year, and you know coming out he is the best running back in the draft since Adrian Peterson and a better pass receiver out of the backfield, he's going to destroy in Cincinnati. Jeremy Hill is going to be put in a pilot seat and have the eject button pulled on him.
Yeah, his days are pretty much numbered there, I figure.
That, watching college, knowing the top guys, being ready when they get drafted, seeing where they go to, and seeing where they have a chance. I'm not really high on Leonard Fournette because there's nothing else around him.
Boy, he's got a terrible offensive line there in Jacksonville. Blake Bortles looks garbage. Look, Chad Henne could be the starting quarterback come week 1.
He probably will because they can save $19 million by dumping Bortles.
That's probably
so. It's probably
idea.
Going to happen.
Yep.
But you got to look at you look at Cincinnati, the good rush offense. They lost a couple O-line guys, but they got Dalton there, who everybody hates in fantasy, but if you start him at home, he's usually good for 2.
I had Bob Harris from the Football Diehards on with me last week. He said this year will be a Red Rocket year for Andy Dalton.
I'm not against Andy Dalton at all. I think he'd be a good backup.
I love the guy.
Good spot start guy.
No question about it.
So long-winded reply here. I guess I minimize risk. I evaluate college thoroughly, and food for thought down the road here. I believe kickers and defenses do matter.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of guys that go against me on that.
Myself included.
Yeah, okay. Well, why? Why?
I would much rather be a part of something, and I've yet to find somebody. I'm not a commish guy. If I was and I started a league, I would go more independent defensive players. I would maybe do 3. I'd do 1 lineman, 1 linebacker, 1 secondary guy. I think that makes more sense than the fact that defense and special teams tends to be so wide-ranging in terms of the scoring system. I've been in leagues where I'm docked and end up with negative points more weeks than not.
Well, see, that's not real football to me.
I don't get that.
That's not real football to me.
But that's my beef with DST in general, is that there's just no uniformity to it at all. And as far as kickers go, I mean, listen, they're a dime a dozen. Yes, there's going to be that one
Justin
guy
Tucker.
There's going to be that one guy that stands out in front of everybody else. Justin Tucker's the consensus number 1 this year. I totally get that. But year to year, who knows who it's going to be? You draft a kicker, he does what he does. He's going to get you some points unless the team gets shut out. Don't draft the Jets kicker. That's the bottom line. Okay.
Okay.
But that's what my take, real quick, in a nutshell, as to why I don't think defenses and kickers are that big a deal in fantasy football.
I think Justin Tucker is a better pick when it feels like kickers might be starting to go. I think Justin Tucker is a better pick at that draft than, say, a Victor Cruz or a Stephon Diggs. I believe Justin Tucker. Listen, I finished the League of All League draft last weekend, 2 weekends ago.
Right,
okay,
right.
My kicker is Dan Bailey. My defense is Minnesota.
Okay, both good choices.
Which I probably took them early enough that I gave up on a Wendell Smallwood and a Torrey Smith.
Sure.
Some people don't like that philosophy. I do. I think it wins games.
Well, and you did win the little kids table last year, so got to give you some credit there. As far as quarterbacks go, how do you approach the position from a drafting standpoint, considering your league's scoring system? Because it is pretty unique.
It's never changed. The League of All Leagues for 29 years has been 6 points for a touchdown pass, -2 for an interception. 1 point per 300 yards, or 1 point per 100 yards passing,
which is different than most leagues.
Yep.
Most leagues go 20 or 25, and you get a point.
No, we go 1 for 100. We look at it as a touchdown heavy league. We try and make it as close to real football as we can. There are no decimal point scores in our league. Games end 31-14 or 42-28. We like it to stay as close to real football as possible. But to your question, how do I draft a quarterback? I want somebody who's been there and done that. Most recently, I was burned 2 years ago now. I saw Blake Bortles' 30-plus touchdown fest in 2015, and I kept him in the League of All Leagues. And the thing that really gnaws at me is that I had 2 quarterbacks during 2015, and both of them were doing good, and I traded the wrong guy midseason. I traded David Carr. Kept
Derek
the wrong
Carr.
guy.
David
Carr. Yeah, that was the number one overall failure.
You wouldn't want David Carr.
I wouldn't want David Carr.
No,
Derek
but
Carr. Thank you.
Yep.
So that was a mistake. And what I did was I kind of went against my inner nature of having a guy who's been there, done that. I took a guy with one hot season and I went with it, and I paid for it. I did not make the playoffs last year in the League of All Leagues. Rough year. I paid for the Bortles mistake. And every time you do that, Andy, you're reminded of what you used to do before you did this stupid thing, and then you go back to what you did and you get better. So this year, I ended up drafting. Last year, I drafted Kirk Cousins. I thought he did well enough for me. He's done well enough in Washington so far that I kept him this year. So Kirk Cousins will be the urine monkeys quarterback heading into 2017.
I like those weapons they've surrounded him with in Washington. In terms of running backs, the consensus top dogs would appear to be David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell. After that, everyone's got a different idea of who should be ranked where, and everyone's got a different idea of who could be next to emerge and become a top 5 guy. Do you think Joe Mixon is a guy that
I
has that kind
absolutely
of...
do.
I know, now full disclosure, you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan, so
Absolutely.
You would feel that way, but here's a little backstory. You mentioned earlier the fact that you love to watch these guys when they're playing in college.
Yes.
Get some sort of scope as to how they might compete at the next level. So you've seen plenty of Joe Mixon over time.
I've seen a ton of Joe Mixon, and the thing that impresses me most about him, besides his unbelievable speed and I'm not going to say Barry Sanders, but he has an elusiveness that leaves people in his wake. But Adrian Peterson, coming out of Oklahoma in 2007, was my number 1 draft pick.
Easy.
Okay?
Easy. And this is...
But dude couldn't catch passes.
That's true.
Joe Mixon can catch 100 balls.
Although Adrian Peterson's very first touchdown in the NFL was a pass.
Against the Atlanta Falcons.
It was a swing pass.
Against the Atlanta
that he
Falcons.
took for 50-plus yards out to pay dirt. So you look
no one more stunned than me.
You look pretty genius with that number 1 pick that year, that's for sure.
Well, listen, and you know as well as I do, that, the years that we've been friends, you know that I'm objective. If Oklahoma's terrible, I'm as hard on him as anybody.
Oh, easy.
But Joe Mixon is truly a gifted player. Samaje Perine could be a very, very nice mid-round pickup for somebody looking for a sleeper. I hate saying that word. It's so cliched.
Notice
somebody
I haven't
looking
used it
for
once.
someone lurking in the grass. Samaje Perine in Washington. Just a speedy box of coffin nails.
2 reasons why Samaje Perine, I'm pumping the brakes on that guy. Joe Mixon, I could buy what you're saying right now, what you're selling. 2 reasons I'm pumping the brakes on Perine. Number 1, ball security. He's had major issues through camp and through preseason games in action. Number 2, pass protection, which is such an underrated metric when it comes to young running backs in this league. Coaches are not ready to hand the keys over largely to these young guys because they don't know pass pro yet.
That's fair. Would you, are you interested in a wager?
I would love to do a wager. What are you interested in?
Over under. Number of touchdowns Samaje Perine gets as a rookie.
This season.
Okay. What do you think?
Well, you have to set the over under.
You want to put it at 6? You want to put it at 7? You want to put it at 8?
You put it where you want to put it, and I will tell
7.
you. I am taking the under.
I will take the over.
All right.
$40.
$40.
$40. I'm taking the over.
Samaje Perine is going to be under 7 touchdowns.
If he scores 7, then we just go out and have some beers and call it good.
Yeah, we'll trade beers.
I agree with your pass protection. I agree with fumbleitis. I think he's going to be a surprise just because there's nobody in Washington other than Rob Kelly.
That's it.
That can do anything. And that
Chris Thompson.
He's
pass catching, kind of a gadget
Chris
guy.
Thompson is a Ziploc bag.
Yeah,
he's a guy that holds your lunch for you. There's no value to him. Once he's in a game and played 3 downs, you fold that Ziploc up and you throw it away because he's completely recyclable. He's not going to be a star. Samaje Perine is going to be a star.
Well, you heard it from Biff Hammer himself. Biff, this has been a lot of fun, man. I tell you, the time just flies when you're among friends. You know that.
I miss this.
But I want to at least give you an opportunity here in the last couple of minutes we have in this segment to kind of give me an overall view from your brain as to how our listeners should approach their drafting differently than they've probably been doing it from a guy who's been there thousands of times before.
Stay away from your favorite teams. If you have to, make sure that your favorite team guy is a guaranteed guy, like a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers or an Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, suspension notwithstanding, if it wasn't for an off-the-field issue, guy would be just as gold as he was last year.
Top 3 pick, easy.
In drafts.
Yep.
Other things, mock drafting. doesn't work. It all goes out the window the second somebody does something unexpected.
Absolutely.
So don't waste your time with that.
Mm-hmm.
Have, in our league, you have 8 starting positions. Quarterback, 2 backs, 2 receivers, tight end, kicker, defense. Know who you want. Have 3 guys at least at each of those positions before you go in. You're probably not going to get one of them at every position. But if you come out of that and say, you know what, I got who I wanted at quarterback, I got I got 2 of the receiver pool I got one of my running backs, I got one of my tight ends, you're going to feel better about your draft, man.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go in it and just say, well, let's see here, open up the book and let's become a ranking slave. Next available player is Bilal Powell. No, sir. That doesn't take any work. That doesn't take any. This is about being a GM, right?
Yep, that's
This
exactly
is what's
right.
the fun about this. If you just follow down what every other monkey at the table is doing and going, Sporting News says the 77th best wide receiver here is Laquan Treadwell. You're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to win. And eventually you're not going to play. It's about outsmarting other people. Throw that. You know what? Take the book and throw it away and just look at the stickers. The stickers are set on some table by color. Go up there. When you don't know what to do, walk up there and just look at it until you do. And go with it. And remember, this is supposed to be fun. If you're playing for money alone, I feel bad for you.
That's why daily fantasy, man. You and I will have a conversation about this down the road somewhere. But I think, it's a flash in the pan. It's a get-rich-quick scheme, which I don't love because the romanticism of what we do and the competition among friends is really what fantasy football is all about. Biff Hammer, thank you so much for taking time, man. We're going to have you back, I promise you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
More of the 515 Fantasy Football coming your way here in minutes on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show, heard each and every Thursday from 11 to 1 on 1350 AM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. We're also on Apple Podcasts, on Google Play. Boy, Brian, the more I say that, the more it just rolls off the tongue. It's not like it used to be with iTunes and Stitcher, but,
Hey, whatever works, whatever gets you there, whatever gets you to listen to the podcast, we'll take it.
Indeed. If you listen on the radio, miss any part of the show, you can always go back and listen on demand, so no worries there. We've got a lot of ground to cover yet in this episode of the show. But first, I want to go through week 2 and talk about a few of the things we may have learned in each of these matchups. We'll begin with Seattle 20, Minnesota 13. In this game, we saw Russell Wilson throw 13 of 18 for 206 yards, 2 touchdowns. And we saw rookie Christopher Carson, who I alluded to in the headlines segment, deep running back sleeper, Brian, in Seattle. He looked pretty good, albeit not against ones on defense. And, he's got that terrible offensive line to deal with in Seattle. But a guy to at least make note of and know who he is.
I believe in a old pop quiz, I told you that none of the 3 running backs will have the majority.
That was a question.
And that just proves my point a little bit more.
You think it's going to be Christopher Carson, do you?
Well, I think there's going to be 4 running backs.
Yeah, that's a good point. And at the time, I had no idea who Christopher Carson even was.
I have a crystal ball.
Well, obviously, we've talked about D'Angelo Henderson in the past, Denver, and he came out of nowhere, and you talked about him beforehand. Well, Zay Jones, we talked about in the draft show back in May.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who has over 150 receptions
didn't I talk
in college.
about Kenny Galladay?
You talked about, because you're a Lions homer, so I'll give you credit there, too.
I knew that was going to be
You got a whole bunch of Gary Barnages on your resume now.
Sure
Congratulations. All right, so on the Minnesota side, we saw Dalvin Cook once again impress with 7 rushes for 40 yards. He also had a reception for 10. Dalvin Cook is going to be the workhorse back in that Minnesota offense. I am convinced, and I've moved him up my cheat sheet at ESPNDesMoines.com. So take note, folks. He is a high-end running back 2, currently ranked 13 for me on my cheat sheet. That's as high as Dalvin Cook has been. And of note, Brian, that is the highest rookie running back I've got on that board as well.
Ooh.
Ravens 31, Dolphins 7. Buck Allen in this game, 10 rushes, 40 yards, 3 receptions, 16 yards. Saw Larry Donnell score a touchdown for the Ravens on short yardage situation. Larry Donnell, former Giant, looks to be the starting tight end for the Baltimore Ravens, a team that has made superstars out of very pedestrian tight ends in the past. Do you think Larry Donnell's a deep sleeper at the tight end?
Look, it's possible, but I'm not going to get excited about a deep sleeper tight end, if they don't look like Gronk.
Okay.
I mean, that's just the reality of it. is I'm not going to get too excited, and especially because it's the Ravens. Because when you think you got the Ravens figured out, cough, Brashard Perriman, cough, everything goes downhill quick.
Sure. Jay Cutler's first action as a Dolphin, he went 3 of 6 for 24 yards. I think he'll be just fine, but I'm not drafting him.
That's his typical numbers.
Well, aside from the fact that there's no interceptions in there anywhere, but, maybe he had himself a real good smoky treat before the show. And maybe that boosted his production anyway. Eagles 20, Bills 16. Carson Wentz, 6 of 9 for 56 yards. Tyrod Taylor struggling, and I'm not surprised. I mean, they are all jumping ship there in Buffalo. 8 of 18, 53 yards, a couple of picks for Tyrod Taylor, and I'm pretty sure the Bills are going to be moving on from him as soon as they possibly can. Buccaneers 12, Jaguars 8. A baseball score there out of this one. Solid performances from Winston, Evans, and Martin in limited action. Bortles replaced by Henne. We talked about that in headlines. The defense looked much improved. They kept the Buccaneers out of the end zone largely. So Jaguars, if you're a DST type and you're looking for kind of a sleeper defense and special teams, I suggest Jacksonville. Take them late. Titans 34, Panthers 27. A glimpse into the future here with Derrick Henry. 16 rushes, 36 yards, 2 touchdowns. The per carry average there, terrible. But Derrick Henry is a guy who ultimately will score some touchdowns, no matter how productive DeMarco Murray is in that offense. 3 receptions for 17 yards as well for Derrick Henry, who one day will be a superstar in this league, mark my word. Christian McCaffrey had 3 rushes for 33 yards and a touchdown, 2 receptions, 39 yards. Again, the gadget guy in that Carolina offense, but they've got him running between the tackles too, Brian. I'm not sure if that surprises you at all.
No, nothing surprises me. How do you not know this?
Listen to you. You're unbelievable.
Like a boss.
Chiefs 30, Bengals 12. Patrick Mahomes 10 of 14, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. Looked sharp in this. Charkandrick West. There's another name like Lorenzo Taliaferro. Didn't know he was still on roster. 7 rushes for 113 yards for Charkandrick West, who was everybody's darling 2 years ago on the waiver wires, if you remember that, when Jamal Charles went down.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys where I got super excited, and then along comes Spencer Ware, and it's like, well, that was quick.
You
cool.
picked the wrong
Thanks.
guy.
Yeah.
Jeremy Hill, 6 rushes for 28 yards in this one for the Bengals. Mixon, 6 rushes, 16 yards, a reception for 15. Nothing really of note there for Cincinnati. Cowboys 24, Colts 19. Dak Prescott, Des Bryant looking midseason form here. McFadden, 9 rushes, 59 yards. Speaking of Ezekiel Elliott, we might see him in week 3. He might get a little action, so keep an eye out there in the Cowboys world. Morris or Tolzien week 1? For the Indianapolis Colts. I'm not sure it really matters in the fantasy world, but I'm curious which turd they're going to trot out there.
I'll go with Tolzien.
You think so?
Yeah, just because he has more experience.
Marlon Mack, the rookie running back there, 5 rushes, 45 yards, 2 receptions for 14 yards, so getting involved, and we'll see what kind of a workload he can get with the aging Frank Gore still in the backfield there in Indy. Lions 16, Jets 6. Matthew Stafford 8 of 10, 84 yards and a touchdown. This one to Marvin Jones, who no doubt will get off to a hot start again this year before completely disappearing. Nothing to report on the Jets side. Surprise, surprise, that team is absolutely terrible. Buffalo is in serious contention with New York as far as the most terrible team in the league, competing for that number 1 pick next year. Green Bay 21, Washington 17. Nothing to report on the Packers side. They've been pretty vanilla all off season long, or preseason, I should say. Kirk Cousins, however, got a lot of action here. 14 of 23, 144 yards, and a touchdown. This to Jamison Crowder, a guy to remember in PPR leagues in later rounds. You definitely want to invest in a guy like Jamison Crowder, who might not get you a ton of receptions, ton of yards, but he will score touchdowns, especially when the Redskins are down in the red zone. Texans 27, Patriots 23. Deshaun Watson, 3 of 10, 102 yards. Going to be a while before they hand the keys over to him. Looks like it's going to be Tom Savage come week 1. Deontay Foreman, we mentioned in headlines, 7 rushes, 17 yards, a touchdown, couple receptions for 66 yards. Tom Brady, 6 of 9, 67 yards and a touchdown. Did you see who he threw his touchdown to by chance, Brian?
Rob Gronkowski?
Rex Burkhead.
Oh, Rex Burkhead.
No
Sweet.
clarity in that backfield whatsoever. If you're listening to me, my advice: stay away from the Patriots backfield. Period. Don't draft any of them.
Yeah, there's like 17 people back
you are
there,
going to
isn't
be
there?
so frustrated trying to figure it out week to week. Just forget it. Let somebody else deal with that headache. Broncos 33, 49ers 14. Trevor Siemian 8 of 11, 93 yards and a touchdown to Jordan Taylor. Former Hawkeye C.J. Beathard 7 of 12, 110 yards and a touchdown. Guess who he threw his touchdown to?
C.J. Fedorowicz.
Former Iowa Hawkeye George Kittle.
A
tight end sleeper there in San Francisco. So Hawkeye
Fedorowicz isn't even on the Niners.
He's a Houston guy, but anyway.
That's how much I was paying attention to your tight end talk.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I know you're not a fan. I get it. Fine. Bears 24, Cardinals 23. Benny Cunningham had himself a receiving touchdown. Rookie Tariq Cohen looked pretty decent, 11 rushes, 77 yards. Nothing on the Cardinals side. Moving on. Los Angeles Rams 24, the Raiders 21. Jared Goff actually kind of torched the Raiders here. 16 of 20, 160 yards and a touchdown.
Settle down.
Cooper Kupp on the receiving end of that score. Todd Gurley, 8 rushes, 38 yards. He did score a touchdown. On the Raiders side, David Carr, 7 of 9, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Steelers 17, Falcons 13. James Conner, 20 rushes, 98 yards. Pump the brakes on that fella for now. Nothing on the Falcons side. Saints 13, Chargers 7. Alvin Kamara. You see that touchdown run by the youngster?
No.
Took it right up the gut and ran away from everybody.
Beat it.
5 rushes, 61 yards, a touchdown. He also had a catch for 22 yards and will be involved in that offense. So, I know there's the Mark Ingram, Adrian Peterson deal, but Alvin Kamara, he's gonna contribute there in New Orleans. I'm telling you.
That's why I was fine not drafting anybody there.
I hear you. Nothing on the Chargers side to report. Browns 10, Giants 6. Deshaun Kaiser, again, a guy that I think's got a real shot at getting the starting job there in Cleveland sooner than later. 8 of 13, 74 yards. He chipped in 5 rushes for 35 yards and a touchdown as well, so Kaiser can do it with his arm, can do it with his legs. What's not to like about the guy? Why not throw him in there if you're Cleveland?
Might as well. What do you got to lose?
They're not going to get the number 1 pick. We know who that's going to, either the Jets or the Bills. Beckham, of course, of note, the ankle injury there for the Giants. Otherwise, nothing to report. But, anything else you noticed coming into Week 3, Brian? Anything you're looking forward to seeing here in Week 3, the full dress rehearsal?
If I'm looking at quarterbacks and maybe I've already had a draft, I'm looking at really completion percentage and no interceptions. I may be watching someone that I've already drafted to see what their offensive line's doing. Like if the offensive line is just letting people through all the time, that's an issue. And I might go pick up another quarterback on the waiver wire just to see how it plays out for a little bit. Why not? I mean, you have to look kind of beyond the scope of things and just look and read the tea leaves a little bit.
We have a lot still to come in this show, the 515 Fantasy Football Show. The next segment, Brian and I are going to conduct a Dynasty Rookie Mock Draft. So
I don't even know what that is.
All right, well, that's next on 515 Fantasy Football. You are listening to the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eikenberry. There's plenty still to come on this episode, probably one of the most important episodes of the season, definitely of the preseason as we approach National Draft Day on Saturday. A lot of folks who haven't drafted yet are going to be drafting here very soon. And one type of league in particular I've always liked to have at least a toe in is a dynasty league. Where you're doing a separate draft for rookies only and you're getting to keep those rookies for a number of years. At least those are the types of dynasty leagues I've been in the past. So you actually do a separate draft for rookies. And Brian and I are going to go through at least a one-round mock here and go through all of these rookies and where you would take them. For example, Brian, you begin with the number 1 pick. Let's say you have the number 1 dynasty rookie pick. Which of the crop of rookies this year are you aiming to grab with that number 1?
So let me just preface here. Things I'm looking at and the things I want in the dynasty realm is I want the rookie to be in a spot where in 2 or 3 years they're going to contribute in a meaningful way. Not right now. So keep that in mind when we go through this because my number 1 pick would be Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
Because that starting quarterback job in Houston is going to be his. It may not be this year, but it'll be year 2. That's going to be his job. So if he gets the time to sit, if he is a really good quarterback, you struck gold. So I'm not looking for the rookies to contribute year 1. I'm looking at a bigger part of the field.
Yeah, I mean, typically the quarterback position, those guys can stick around the league for many years, a lot longer usually if they're kept upright for the most part, a lot longer than the other skill positions like running back and even wide receiver. So the quarterback, it's not a terrible thing. And let's face it, you usually only have one pick per round. And if you wait for the second round, you might not get the guy you want. So you might as well take who you want. And Deshaun Watson, we've talked about in the past extensively as a guy that I love because the guy's a winner. He's a proven winner. He's been that way at every level, and I think here in Houston, he's got enough weapons at his disposal. All he needs to do is just work out the rust a little bit and get used to the game speed a little bit is a term you hear quite a bit with these rookies. But, I think Watson's fine. If it were me, I would take Dalvin Cook at number one and not think twice about it. Yes, I'm a Minnesota homer, but what we've seen thus far in the preseason, and I don't think there's any argument here, that Dalvin Cook is going to be the man there in Minnesota this season. An improved offensive line. I like some of the movements they've made there. I like the way Sam Bradford's been playing. They can't just key on the running game because he can beat them with his arm. Dalvin Cook is a flashy playmaker. We've seen what he can do at Florida State. He's going to step right in as he's done here in the preseason, at least early on, and run the ball, catch the ball, do things that Adrian Peterson couldn't even do.
So I will follow your running back theory, and I will go with Joe Mixon because I, again, apply the fact that, look, Cincinnati's always had a decent line above average. They're not terrible for the offensive line. They've got a good quarterback. They've got a good wide receiver, so there's pieces to help this running back succeed. And let's be honest, the only reason he fell into round two was because of different issues, not his ability. So this year, maybe not. Second year, he's going to be much better, and that's the whole point of a dynasty draft.
I would agree with you on Mixon. I don't think this year is going to be the year. I think it'll be next year. Biff Hammer, who we had on earlier in the show, would disagree. He's a huge Mixon fan, and you probably heard in that segment the guy. He's all in on Joe Mixon. If Biff Hammer were picking one in this dynasty mock, he would take Mixon all day long. But, I think Mixon's a guy down the road. He could be really, really good there in Cincinnati. No question about it. For the third pick, listen, man, or I'm sorry, would this be the fourth pick?
4.
Okay. So you're going to have to help me out here, Brian. Be the decision maker, and I think I know what your answer is going to be. Is this a standard or a PPR league?
It's a standard.
Of course it is, because it's your league. If it's a standard league, I'm taking Leonard Fournette next. Absolutely no question about it, right?
Yeah, so for me, it was between Fournette and Mixon when it got to me, and I went with Mixon just because of strength of the team.
Yeah, and that's the argument against Leonard Fournette all day long, aside from the fact that he's got these foot issues now. Well, not now. He's been dealing with it since his days at LSU. They've crept back in here in the preseason, and he's going to miss some time now. But
what if they just chopped his foot off and put like a turf tire on there so like he could still run, but it was like a tire?
Yeah, I mean, that would work. Or he could get one of those old school kicking shoes, the block.
Yeah, he's fine. Walking around like Herman Munster.
I think Leonard Fournette's going to be just fine, especially when Jacksonville kind of starts to put things together there. And I think the quarterback position is a big question mark. They do need to improve their offensive line. I wish Fournette was more of a pass catcher, but he's just not. So who are you taking after those guys? You got Watson, got Cook, got Mixon and Fournette. Who else do you like?
So caveat number 2 to Brian's rookie draft strategy is take all running backs, because that is a gold mine of position.
Even though you took a quarterback with your first pick.
Well,
okay.
That's why I explained it out.
Nice.
That's why I explained it out. So this is caveat number 2. I'm picking all running backs from here on out.
Okay.
Wide receiver has the lowest success rate of a rookie to actually be impactful.
Agreed.
It's hard to be a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, especially in your first 3 years. So it's something that doesn't come easy. Running back's completely different. So that way, my strategy is all running back. So I am going to go with Kareem Hunt because this may not be his job this year, but it will be next year.
It could be this year. I will see what Spencer Ware ends up doing there. But, yeah, Kareem Hunt could be a guy that steps right in here in year 1. We'll see what happens.
Yep.
I'm going to pass again on Corey Davis. He's still out there, but I think at this point I have to take Christian McCaffrey, don't I? I mean, this guy is a total weapon, and, Carolina tailoring their offense a bit to his strengths. So, they spent a high draft pick on him. They expect him to be a guy that's going to contribute, not only catching the ball, but also going to be running a bit as well. So, Christian McCaffrey. Let's wrap up with a couple of more picks here, Brian.
All right, so I'm going to go Alvin Kamara, your boy, from the Saints.
Like it. That's good. I think, gosh, if I think I have to take Corey Davis at this point. I think he's a long-term project, 2-3 years, but I think once he gets going, he's going to be a guy that stays in the league and is very successful for a very long time. Growing up with Marcus Mariota.
Yep.
I like it.
And I'll stick with running back and go Marlon Mack from the Colts because it's not this year, but Gore's going to be done here pretty soon.
Yeah, you know who I like even more than Marlon Mack, actually?
Joe Williams?
Joe Williams is okay. James Conner's okay. I'm actually looking at a guy named Jamal Williams, 4th-round pick out of Green Bay. They want him. I'm convinced. They want him to be the early down back there in Green Bay. If that ends up panning out, man, that could be a game changer for the Green Bay Packers offense. They haven't had that guy since, Ahman Green, really.
Huh.
Stick around, friends. We have the pop quiz segment coming up here shortly. 3 of Fantasy's toughest questions come in rapid-fire fashion at Brian, and you'll hear it next on 515 Fantasy Football. Stick around. The 515 Fantasy Football Show, heard each and every Thursday from 11 to 1 on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eikenberry. Don't forget, we're on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. We're on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at IkeFFB. That's IKEFFB. And, Brian, we're also on Patreon in case our listeners want to contribute in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. If you head out to patreon.com/515 Fantasy Football or just type us in the search engine, you're going to find us there. And you're going to find 3 levels, 5, 10, and 20. Each have their own individual contributions and what you get for supporting their show in various ways. All are guaranteed to help you win, with culminating on a Saturday night special where you get all 3 and you get direct access to us to adjust your roster and roster management toolkit, basically.
Yeah, we're talking about personal,
is
touch
it worth
to your lineup.
Is it worth it to you to win your league in these different ways? And look, hey, you can get inside our heads. We get it all the time. Where do you get the data from? Where do you get this from? Well, here's how you can get to be a part of that. You can let us just run your team.
Being Brian Eikenberry.
Dun dun dun.
Should be a movie.
Yeah. You'll be good looking, so you have a good hair.
Who would they cast as you in the movie? They wouldn't cast you.
John C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly. Wow. That's funny. I'll have to think real hard about who they'd cast for me. No idea. Johnny Depp, I guess.
No. No.
No, you know who it would be, though? Honestly. And I'm blanking on his name now. Why am I blanking on his name?
What's the dude from The Shield that played the Thing?
Oh, Michael Chiklis?
Yeah,
I've been told Michael Chiklis. I've been told I look like Kyle Long from the Chicago Bears. And I've also been told that I look like who's the bald dude from the movie Snatch? Jason Statham.
No
there you
idea.
go. Jason Statham.
Let's not go there.
Girls have told me I look like him. That worked to my advantage.
Wow.
All right. Pop quiz time. 3 of Fantasy's toughest questions. Brian, you ready for number 1?
Sure.
Which running back is the most valuable handcuff to own in case the incumbent needs to be replaced for any reason?
Mark Ingram. Boom, curveball. You weren't expecting that now, were you?
No, I don't know if he's a handcuff, Brian. He's more like a feature guy.
The starting running back is Adrian Peterson.
I don't know. We'll see about
Look
that.
At the depth
Maybe
chart.
week 1 against Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, that one for sure.
Yeah.
No, I mean, to me, that is the ultimate handcuff.
But we don't know what the split's going to be there yet.
Adrian Peterson is the number one running back on the depth chart.
All right.
And the ultimate handcuff is his counterpart. So you've got the run and you've got the pass.
But the reason you're wrong is the fact that we don't know the split yet.
I just stumped you. And you're
I
like,
know. I have
scrambling through your notes over there.
Am I scrambling, Brian?
Yep.
I have it right here in front of me.
Sure
that I have
sound like you've been stuttering and stalling for the last minute.
I have a running back with a handcuff and a snap rate history between the two, with a 42% snap rate in 2016, finishing as the RB16 in half PPR leagues. I don't see any good reason why the Falcons' Tevin Coleman shouldn't be viewed as the most valuable number 2 going into this season. My only knock on him is his lack of field presence once the Falcons get down inside the 5. When they're there, it's the Devontae Freeman show 95% of the time. But Tevin Coleman finds ways of being productive, my friend. So that's my answer. Question number 2, which current handcuff will be a consensus top 10 running back on cheat sheets at this time next year, Brian?
That's a tricky question.
Right. I've already referred to him on this show, by the way, and sort of teased who it might be.
I don't pay attention.
I know you're not. You're over there playing on your damn phone.
No, dang, that's a tough question. I don't
right?
know. I'll pass. I'll just take the loss on this one.
So you can't figure out any handcuffs at all? Any guys that are backing up incumbents right now and will pop up and become like big-time stars?
Mine would be Mark Ingram again because Adrian Peterson's going to get his leg broken in half.
So wrong. The answer is Derrick Henry, Brian. It's nearly impossible to predict how a former league MVP and perennial top 10 option at the position will eventually tumble, but history is on my side here in predicting that Henry, who flashed in the second half of 2016 behind DeMarco Murray's top 5 season, will ultimately become fantasy gold once Murray turns 30 years old, which, by the way, is happening this coming February, Brian.
Hot ziggity.
So it's Derrick Henry, going to be a top 10 guy next year on Cheat Sheets. That's the call. We'll go back and listen to this and see how that panned out. Question number 3. Odell Beckham Jr. injured his ankle in week 2 of the NFL preseason, as you know. His status for the regular season opener against Dallas is in question. In fact, some suggest he may miss more. Are you moving OBJ down your draft board?
No, because you can't. It's just 1 week. And are you really passing on him for 1 week? I think there's reasons to move him down, and that's more related to the rest of the team, but it's not because of the ankle.
The answer is no. OBJ is a notoriously slow start, Brian, as we've seen more than once. In 2016, he finished week 1 as wide receiver 45. Not concerned in the least that he won't, barring catastrophe, finish around 100 catches, 11 to 1,300 yards receiving, and at least 9 touchdowns regardless. Yet, he's still worthy of first-round consideration. He probably won't last further than probably pick 6 or 7 in most drafts. The latest I've seen him go is 7 in every draft I've been in, including a relatively recent one that we were just a part of. So,
whoops.
But, OBJ is a guy, listen, I don't necessarily like starting my season with a bruised apple. You know what I'm saying by that?
Yeah, 100%.
I want my apple to be pristine and crisp and tasty and all that stuff. But if I got a guy who's already... Fuji? You like Fuji?
Yeah, don't give me a Brayburn. I'll throw that thing right back at your head.
I like Johnny Golds and I like Jazz. You ever had a Jazz apple?
Jazz apple,
and Honeycrisp, those are good.
Honeycrisp are good, but they're like $7 a pound.
They're very expensive. They are Minnesota natives, like myself, so I have sort of a little bit of an affinity for the Honeycrisp.
There is a new Ambrosia apples.
Seen those.
Those are super expensive, but they're really good.
I've never had one.
Jazz bought them on accident one time.
Whoops.
Yep. And she's like,
I like the Jazz.
I got there and they were like 18 because she gets a big bag because me and Benny
too.
plow through apples.
For sure.
And it was like $18 and she's like, I had no idea. And why did I got out there? And I'm like, I'm not going to go return apples at Walmart.
You could have gotten 2 bottles of apple pucker for that.
Yeah, and that's terrible.
Well, that would have
That's for like sophomores in high school.
Yeah, but you're going to get a
but
buzz
we don't
out
condone,
of it, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait a minute.
Headache.
Sophomores in high school aren't 21, Brian. What are you thinking?
I don't know.
Gosh, you're an awful human being. You know
I
that?
know. I meant late blooming sophomores in college who got a slow start and went to the service.
I think you and I are going to have to revisit this idea of Mark Ingram as a handcuff. Because of the production over the course of the past few seasons,
doesn't
and his
matter.
finish,
He is
can't
not
be considered a handcuff. He's a feature back.
No, he's not. The feature back is the RB1 on the team. Mark Ingram is the RB2 on that team.
No,
Look at the depth chart. Look at the depth chart.
I don't buy it.
Look at the depth chart.
Aside from Adrian Peterson, of course, wanting to get at his former team in week 1 this season, I don't think he's going to be the lead dog there. He's a situational guy. I hated that he ended up in New Orleans as a Minnesota Vikings guy and a Adrian Peterson fan. I love the guy and I love his game, but I don't love his game in New Orleans where they already got a guy that can do everything he does and more in Mark Ingram. So I don't get it. There are lots of things I don't get.
Call your congressman.
Right. Stick around, friends. We got a draft cram session coming your way here in a little bit. The Flea Flicker. We'll talk about the Listener League. Oh. We'll talk about the results of our Sleeper Wire Pro-Am draft a little bit. But next segment, we're going to talk goal line gold and red zone radicals. Running backs inside the 5 and wide receivers inside the 10. who to target in your drafts, and we'll do that next on 515 Fantasy Football. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. We're on Apple Podcasts and on Google Play as well. Lots of different options for you to find the show and listen on demand anytime you like. Invite you to rate and review us if you like the show. Maybe we've helped you out in the past. That's how you can help us in return. Or you can become a Patreon as well, and Brian touched on that earlier. So National Draft Day is Saturday, Brian.
Yep.
And in your league, in which you're the commish, and I joined last year and became a part of, we are actually drafting on National Draft Day. And I imagine the vast majority of people are aiming for this weekend probably in general. There are probably a few that'll wait till Labor Day, but,
Yeah, it's all about tradition. I look at Draft Day as kind of like Thanksgiving. You don't really get a whole bunch of stuff out of doing it. You don't really get a whole bunch, but it's more about the tradition aspect of why you're there. And that, to me, is a big deal. So I will issue a challenge to anybody out there. I would love to hear your draft traditions. I mean, even in ours, we're coming up on year 10 here. We're planning a giant trip to Vegas, and we're going to rent some cabanas, and we're going to do the whole deal for the 10-year anniversary.
I'll start saving my pennies now.
Yeah, start saving the pennies now. So I want to hear some people's, what do you guys do that's your fantasy tradition?
Boy, Brian, that's the first I'm hearing of this Vegas thing. That's cool.
No, we announced it last year. You just had your face in the chips.
What?
Burying your muzzle in Doritos, not paying attention to league announcements.
Brian, Doritos are not my preferred snack at the draft.
Or you had
better.
your fingers in that buffalo chicken dip, that too.
I don't remember that at all.
Yep.
I remember snacking on my Oreos at the draft like I always
Lazy
do.
Magician makes the buffalo chicken dip,
That's cool.
and it's the first thing gone.
All right, well, tell you what, I'm going to have to get in on that early then. Maybe that's why I was in on that early last year.
Yep.
Anyway, so it's draft season. Everybody's thinking draft and how they're going to make their teams the best they can be. I got a segment here called Goal Line Gold and Red Zone Radicals. The Goal Line Gold portion of this segment, we're going to talk about running backs who have a large or a high success rate inside the 5-yard line. In fact, these are guys that on the 1-yard line, when you need a yard, convert at a higher percentage than anybody else in the league. So this is kind of a valuable segment here. If you're looking for guys, that typically will, convert down near the goal line. We begin in a place I told you to completely avoid this year, New England. Mike Gillisley last year was 15 of 17 when he only needed a yard. So he converted on 88.2% of 1-yard situations. Mike Gillisley, very strong near the goal line. We saw LaShawn McCoy get pulled quite a bit when the Bills got down deep last year.
Sure did.
Are we going to see the same in New England? That's a conversation worth having because I'm not sold on that. I think it's going to be a committee approach there in New England.
I will say this. If Gronk is healthy, Gillisley is not your boy. For that specific reason, right there. I think the reason Blount was so effective last year is because Gronk was injured.
Guess who's next on the list at 85.7%? Conversions of 1 yard when needed 1 yard. We're going to stay in New England. It's Rex Burkhead.
Oh, Jesus.
So Gillisley and Burkhead, we got two of the highest conversion guys on 1 yard situations, and they're both in the same backfield. Try to figure that one out now. Try to decipher that if you can, Brian, because
basically going
to
be whatever side of the bed Belichick wakes up on.
Isn't that about right?
Yep.
And then good luck trying to figure out in PPR leagues who it's going to be between James White and Dion Lewis, and God knows who else they've got stashed there. Maybe the water boy will end up catching some passes out of the backfield.
That's why we don't draft them.
Yeah. Well, for a while there, remember, Danny Woodhead, when he was a Patriot coming out of Chadron State College, I thought he was the water boy. I thought they literally threw the water boy out there.
Just about. And then he was on the Madden cover, and
right.
then he was nowhere.
Yikes. Okay. Ezekiel Elliott, no, it shouldn't be any surprise to anybody, did very well in 1 yarded situations last season.
He did very well in 5-yard situations.
That's true, too. 17 of 21, though, when he needed 1 yard. That's an 81% conversion rate. Matt Forte of the New York Jets next at 80%. He was 8 of 10 in that respect. Lamar Miller comes in next at 7 of 9, 77.8%. Now, Lamar Miller's an interesting choice because I think he's a guy that most people look at as a low-end running back 1, when in truth, he's more of a solid running back 2. If you're taking him as your number 1, I think you're taking a big risk there.
Yeah, he wouldn't be my first running back of choice and anywhere in the top couple of rounds. But at the end of the day, he's the only one there. So
for now, anyway. Carlos Hyde is next, 75%. He was 6 of 8 when he needed a yard. Le'Veon Bell, 9 of 12 at 75% as well. You're going to be happy to hear this. Our boy J-Stu, Jonathan Stewart in Carolina,
Yay.
was 12 of 16 in that scenario last season.
That's not bad.
75% conversion rate, and considering what I think is going to happen there in Carolina going forward, we started to see this last season after the concussion that Cam Newton suffered down near the goal line. They really don't want Cam running the ball at all.
Not at all. Not at all.
I think Jonathan Stewart's going to be a big benefactor. I mean, Jonathan Stewart scored a number of touchdowns last season. Did very well, actually, for a guy that nobody's talking about. And in our Sleeper Wire Pro-Am draft yesterday, Brian ended up taking Jonathan Stewart real late, and he's at, what is he, our 4th running back?
Yeah, sure is.
I mean,
actually.
a guy who's got like double-digit touchdown upside. That's not bad.
No, not at all.
Jordan Howard is next in the 1-yard conversion rate. He was 6 of 8 last season, 75%. My concern always has been with Jordan Howard catching passes. To round everything out here, Mark Ingram was a very high percentage, 73.3. He converted 11 of 15. You got Jacquizz Rodgers involved there in Tampa Bay. He'll be the guy unquestionably while Doug Martin serves his suspension to start the season. Then there's the LeGarrette Blunts, the Isaiah Crowells, the DeMarco Murrays, and the Jay Ajayis are kind of all in that 70% range. So those are some guys that, are counted on in 1-yard situations, including when the team gets down near the goal line. The one I'm most intrigued about on this whole list is Latavius Murray. When he was with Oakland, 14 of 21, 66.7% conversion rate. Will he be the guy down near the goal line and not Dalvin Cook for the Vikings this season?
That would suck.
I'm worried about that, if I'm being honest. I love Dalvin Cook as the workhorse in Minnesota. I think Latavius Murray becomes kind of a forgotten man. I think they have an opt-out clause after year number 1. So if this doesn't pan out, I think he's already in Zimmer's doghouse. So
didn't think about that.
I'm worried about Latavius Murray coming in and vulturing those goal lines from Dalvin Cook. So we'll see what happens there. Let's move on to Red Zone Radicals, a few wide receivers and some tight ends in the mix as well that converted very high amount of catch rates inside the 10-yard line. Cameron Braid, we'll begin with him, who's the highest percentile, 78% last season, 7 of 9, scored the most touchdowns for tight ends in the NFL last year with 8, and a guy we also grabbed in our Sleeper Wire Pro-Am draft yesterday. So Cameron Braid is worthy of a sleeper tag in tight end circles. Nobody seems to have them ranked in their top 15 for some reason, but I certainly do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, numbers speak for themselves, and especially when teams come out and say they're still going to be used the exact same way. What are you doing not taking them is my question.
Another sleeper, this at the wide receiver position, but people are forgetting about him after the signing of Eric Decker in Tennessee. How about Rashard Matthews? 75% conversion rate inside the 10, 6 of 8 in the red zone, Brian. That deep in the red zone, too. This is a 10-yard line. So Rashard Matthews, a guy to remember there in Tennessee, who's already got Marcus Mariota's trust and even going back to his Miami days, Brian, he flashed.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Mariota stays healthy. That'll be the key to success there.
Definitely a big one. Mike Evans, no surprise here. A lot of targets down inside the 10-yard line. He was 8 of 11, conversion rate of 73%. Same for Jordy Nelson, who had even more of that, 11 of 15. Jordy's a guy again this year. I know he's ranked for most people outside of the top 5. Maybe he shouldn't be. Maybe we're being unfair to Jordy Nelson. What do you think?
No, I don't think so.
I think because of the lack of running presence the Packers have inside the 10-yard line, they're forced to throw the ball more often than not. So
yeah, and they got a big tight end now. So
well, Martellus Bennett remains to be seen. What
gobble.
He's an elite blocker. Let's just remember that he's not going to be sent out on pass routes all the time. T.Y. Hilton, 70% inside the 10, the conversion rate, 7 of 10. Devontae Adams, stick with the Green Bay Packers here, 8 of 12, 67%. A lot of people targeting him for regression this year, but I'm not buying it. Maybe in touchdown numbers, but I think the number 2 receiver in Green Bay has always been good for about 80 catches and 1,000 yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns.
You don't think this is Cobb's big comeback?
No. I don't see
sure?
that. I don't see that. If he's strictly the slot guy in that offense, and I think that's where he thrives or actually succeeds most is when he's because remember when a couple of years ago when Nelson got hurt and Cobb was all of a sudden the number 1, he didn't necessarily do very well.
No,
in that.
well, he wasn't a number 1. That was his problem.
But he can be another like sneaky Brandon Stokely type. Remember him from Indianapolis back in the day? Like maybe that could be Cobb's comeback. I don't know. Hey, there you go, Snappy. Cobb's comeback.
Ooh.
Hunter Henry of the Los Angeles Chargers, 67% catch rate there inside the 10, 6 of 9. Michael Thomas, 7 of 11, 64%. Here's a sneaky one. Seth Roberts, Oakland Raiders. If you ever wondered why Amari Cooper didn't have very good numbers in the red zone and
look at his
score,
8 touchdowns.
Didn't score a lot of touchdowns, it was because Seth Roberts was the guy that Derek Carr was going to. The speedy outside receiver there in Oakland, 64% catch rate there inside the 10. Antonio Gates, 5 of 8, 63%. Willie Snead, 5 of 8, 63%. Then you got your Tyrell Williams in Los Angeles. You got Mohamed Sanu in Atlanta, Kenny Britt in Cleveland, and then down the list from there, you've got guys in the 50th percentiles like Jordan Reed, Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas, Odell Beckham, Michael Crabtree. Hey, that sounds like kind of a stud list there, does it not?
Close.
Speaking of close, we are getting ever closer to our cram session as we get you prepared with some rules to live by in terms of your fantasy drafts. I'll run down my list. Brian has some thoughts as well on draft season, and it is upon us here, so we're here to help you out and make it as enjoyable experience as it should be. And then, of course, we'll wrap up the show shortly with the 515 Fantasy Flea Flicker as well. It's all coming next. 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Down to our final couple segments in this episode of the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. We're also on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes. We're on Google Play, formerly known as Stitcher. Brian, totally creepy.
Yeah.
All the time.
Maybe they can't hear it. I don't know.
No, they totally got that, I think. Anyway, a couple segments left here. I want to spend at least a few minutes, Brian, going over. I'm going to call this our cram session for the draft. And I want to go over some things that will ultimately help you enjoy your draft that much more.
Booze.
Okay? Number 1, know what you're getting into. How many teams are in your league? What is your scoring system? Is it a keeper league? Is it a snake draft? Is it an auction? Know what you're getting into when you join a league. Don't just join a league to join a league.
Yeah, so I'll meet you there on that one. I think it's very important, at very minimum, that you understand the scoring system.
Very much so.
It goes down to quarterback. Are they 4 points or 6 points for a touchdown?
Or is a league PPR?
PPR.
That's a big
How is your defense scored?
Yeah.
Is it yardage? That's a big one, too.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
That bend, don't break defenses. There are those defenses that give up a ton of yards, but they don't give up at the goal line, so stuff like that.
Number 2, if at all possible, try to get everyone in a room together.
Yeah, live drafts are about 6,000 times more enjoyable.
I would go so far as to say probably 9,000 times better.
So my first question when I'm asked to join a new league is, what site do you use, and is it in person? And if they say a site that I don't like, it's not quite a deal breaker. But if you tell me it's online, we done broke.
There aren't too many that I don't like to be a part of in terms of what site you use. I've used almost all of them at this point. There are some I prefer over others, but all in all, you get what you pay for more often than not, and more often than not, you can find a perfectly fine host for free. Number 3, do not draft more than one player from your favorite team, and only do that when the value is right and you're feeling a need.
Don't get high on your own supply.
There you go. Number 4, do draft players from teams you despise when the value is right and you're feeling a need. You want to win in fantasy football, you got to put your allegiances aside.
True.
Have to.
I
Do
have some. I have some pretty serious reservations about that.
That's fine. You can disagree.
I dislike the majority of the NFC North, and I despise them very greatly.
But you can't get away from the fact that one of the most fantasy-rich teams is right there, not too far from Detroit, Michigan.
Nope.
Brian. Number 5, do not draft a kicker before the second to last round. Don't do it. Unless you have some weird scoring system where your kickers get like 10 points for a 50-yard field goal.
Yeah, I agree with that. Kicker's usually in my last, or sometimes I don't draft a kicker.
I like taking it second to last round, and then I like taking like a total upside flyer with my last pick. That's usually what I do. Number 6, do not reach more than one round for any one player. Just going back to our respectable reaches segment that we had last week, I don't think you reach more than one round for any one player looking at ADP, and you should be using ADP as sort of your guide.
Yeah, don't get too scared. Yeah, I'll comment later.
Okay. Number 7, when trying to decide between two players you consider relatively equal, always choose the one on the higher scoring team.
Yes, I'll go with that.
Shouldn't that be obvious?
I look at injury history. That's something for me. Do I have 2 wide receivers? One's never made it through the entire season, and the other one hasn't been ever hurt. So stuff like that is something that I'll look at.
Number 8, do not get drunk before drafting.
That's terrible.
Stupid.
I'm going to get loaded.
I mean, you're going to lose, right? I mean,
No.
you're going to come away from it with a terrible draft.
No, a hangover, but no.
Boy, I just, getting drunk before drafting, I just think is silly. Number 9, make sure you come prepared with an updated cheat sheet, whether it be your own or one like mine, which you can find online at espndesmoines.com.
So
Don't bring an old busted magazine. You're going to look like an idiot. Everybody's going to know you're a noob and you don't know what you're doing.
So last year, I was in a rush, and I sent a draft sheet that I just downloaded quickly off the internet, sent it to my buddy Ryan. I said, hey, print this off for me at work and bring it to the draft. And he texted me back. He's like, what are you doing? This is from 2014.
Oh, my God.
I just happened to click some random link that I found and I didn't even look at it, and it was from 2014. That would have been awesome.
I'm constantly updating my cheat sheet, espndesmoines.com. Feel free to make use of that. Print it out as my coworker actually did. The coworker I mentioned earlier, his name's John. He won the league last year in his first year competing in fantasy football. So he printed his off. You should do the same. Number 10, treat yourself after every pick. Have a favorite small snack on hand. I mentioned Oreos earlier. That happens to be my favorite. Treat yourself after every pick.
Treat yourself.
Number 11, read and react to what your league mates are doing.
Yes.
Read and react.
This was going to be the one that I wanted to talk about, and I was hoping this was on your list.
For sure.
Because, perfect example. Let's talk about it. Your league requires a tight end position. Gronk is gone. Okay, everybody can relax now. It's the 6th round. You start thinking about a tight end, but you have to pay attention where you're on the draft board. If there's 4 people to go after you and then it comes back to you, there's 5 tight ends left. Don't panic because there's only 4 people ahead of you. What are the odds those 4 people are going to take tight ends? And they're not taking 2. So do the math. You're going to get one. Take the better wide receiver. Think about those number scenarios. Because fantasy football is one of those things where as soon as one person takes a tight end, then 2 are gone, and then everyone gets in panic mode and starts grabbing them.
Perfect. It leads right into number 12 for me. Do not overreact to a run on a position. Try to be the guy that starts a run, not the one that follows the trend.
I am going to be starting fires left and right on Saturday.
I think you're going to like where my head's at on this too, for sure. Number 13, minimize risk as much as possible in rounds 1 and 2. I alluded to this earlier. Don't be risky with your first and your second round pick. I think those 2 are the ones you're trying to be as safe as humanly possible. Guys with a very safe floor and a high ceiling if you can help it. Most guys in the first and second rounds fit that criteria anyway.
Yeah, I am going for guaranteed starters, guaranteed production guys. My first 4 picks, I don't even start gambling until later.
Number 14, prepare snappy responses for when your league mates try to make fun of you in your picks.
Yeah, I guess we could put this one in Patreon. Like you could have me on text, and I'll text you a comeback.
That's not a bad idea.
That'd be cool.
Number 15, make a spectacle whenever possible. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah, we'll leave that one alone.
Number 16, never stop smiling. Make them think you know something they don't. It'll drive them nuts.
That's usually because I farted.
Well, there's that. And that's why you and I never stop smiling when doing the show, because Ollie's always underfoot.
Ollie's over here ripping them.
Finally, this is a 17-point list because it is 2017. So number 17, act like every pick you made was according to your plan. Don't grunt. Don't get pissed. Don't show your league mates that.
No.
It's trouble.
Calm, cool, and collected. Man, put that sticker on the board with confidence. Slap it up there, but do it aligned in your spot. Do not put your sticker in other people's areas. Keep your sticker lined up. Kind of goes back to the drunk comment. And we also have the rule, if you start peeling the sticker, that is your pick. Because you start peeling the sticker off, that's your pick. Done. It's like chess. You touch it, you move it.
We might have to drag this into the 515 Fantasy Flea Flicker. That's our next segment.
Let's do that. Pet peeves during draft.
Brian and I will have plenty to talk about, I'm sure, in our final segment on the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Final segment of this week's edition of the 515 Fantasy Football Show. We do appreciate you listening, whether you got us on 1350 AM ESPN Radio or you're listening on demand on Apple Podcasts /iTunes /Google Play /Stitcher. Wherever you're finding us, we thank you so much for listening. Hope it's been worth your time. Brian and I do a lot of work every single week to prepare good intel and good content.
News to me.
Yeah, well, Brian just shows up and wings it every week, but that's, when I say things like that, I'm trying to rope you into all the hard work I put into this, Brian, because I want you to get some credit for it. I don't know why. I mean, I'm the one doing all the work, carrying all the weight here, but anyway.
I drive here, so there.
You do drive here, so we have to give you that. There's no question about it. The Flea Flicker is always our final segment. We talk about whatever we want to. I want to start real quick with I want to hit on the Sleeper Wire Pro-Am draft we just held. It was just held yesterday. Overall, very happy with the team you drafted, Brian. Way to go.
Yeah, I think so. We did it's a full PPR. So as we drafted wide receiver after wide receiver after wide receiver that catches a lot of passes, kind of chuckling to myself who were drafting low-end running back ones in round one who run the ball a lot.
Yeah,
not
Jordan
realizing
Howard.
that this is a full-point PPR.
Jordan Howard doesn't catch passes.
What are you doing? You could have a running back who runs for 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I can have a wide receiver who catches 8 balls and 50 yards, and I outscore you by like 6.
Not bad. Not bad at all. So, yeah, we targeted Julio Jones with the number 4 overall pick, which I think is a great pick. Of course, it went Johnson, Bell, Brown, first 3.
Yep.
So we had our choice there. We could have taken Beckham, but I think Jones was the right pick in PPR. And then second round, you took
Doug Baldwin.
Boring guy, but a guy that's going to give you 80 to 90 catches every single season, over 1,000 yards, probably upwards of 8 to 12 touchdowns. I mean, Doug Baldwin's super boring. Nobody ever talks about him, but he produces every single year. So love him. Love Terrell Pryor, third-round pick. So we tripled up on wide receivers, our first 3 picks. Brian, overall, I mean, we won't go through the entire draft here. We'll just let the draft speak for itself once the season starts. I'm very happy with the squad. Way to go.
Yay.
The 515 Fantasy Football Listener League. Brian, you've pretty much settled on a draft day, have you not?
I don't know. Did we?
Well, Brian, you're the one commissioning, so.
I was not prepared for this statement.
Oh, great. Here, I thought we had a date in mind. I thought we were going to do it right before Labor Day at some point.
Sounds great.
Okay, so here's the deal. So that's coming up here very soon. So we have a total of, let's see, there's Brian, I, and Rob is our first official invite into the league. Rob Nauman, who's our first Patreon. So there's Brian, there's me, and there's Rob. That's 3. There's 9 more spots to fill. I'm going to start reaching out to longtime listeners of this program via Twitter. You're all going to be contacted via Twitter, and we'll see where you're at. If you accept our terms in terms of making the draft and, all
you got to be there. No auto picking junk.
Oh, I'll be so mad if there's any auto. Everybody should be able to make the draft. That's going to be one of the stipulations, and we have a sponsor that's going to be coming on board, so we're very excited about that and the potential for some giveaways and things like that. So there's
things
going to be
that make you go boom.
Things that make you go boom. Brian, that should be a tagline. That's
Bam.
killer, man. You should charge him for that.
Yeah, I am actually. Rate just went up.
Just kidding, Matt. It's all good. So anyway, if you want to be involved, you better hit us now, man. On Twitter at 515fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at IkeFFB. That's IKEFFB. Reach out to us and let us know you're interested. Otherwise, I'm just going to start, throwing invites out to people I know have been listening since day one, and there are a number of you. So we're going to fill those spots. We're going to get the inaugural 515 Fantasy Football League up and running before Labor Day, Brian.
So pet peeves at the draft.
Yes, sir.
So we do the full draft kit with the big draft board, and we get all these neat little colored stickers, and it's all fun.
That's the way it should be.
My biggest pet peeve is, so we have the rule, you start to peel the sticker, you have pulled it. That is your selection.
Start, or do you have to pull it off the sheet?
No, as soon as you lift the corner of that sticker, that is your pick.
Okay.
You can look through the sheets, you can touch them all, but as soon as you peel the corner, that is your pick. And what absolutely irritates the crap out of me is when someone puts their dang sticker in there all crooked, because it's very simple. It's a grid system. You can't go outside your lines because someone else's sticker's going there.
Have we had the conversation about license plates here in the state of Iowa?
Oh, man, I like the red, white, and blue one that look like the state flag.
No, I don't want to. Yeah, I didn't.
Or all the stupid stickers where people put around like a damn circus.
That is what I'm
God.
Because if you're going to talk about
Enough.
draft boards in a fantasy football league, this is the same basic concept. Our listeners that are in Iowa will understand this right away, but those of you in other states, I'm not sure how your tags work, but ours are all different colors every year. People do this really annoying thing where they stack the stickers on top of one another
clockwise
around the outside of the license plate, basically. And so it looks like a big rainbow, and I think it's the ugliest, dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. They're supposed to crack down on that, by the way. That is something they talked about a couple of years ago, was you can't do this anymore, you can't do this. You're supposed to just place the stickers one on top of one another.
In the pre-designated square that's on your license plate.
Lower left-hand corner in Iowa here, but again, really super annoying. I don't know, it's one of those things that just set me off for no apparent reason, is looking at people in their ugly license plate stickers.
Other pet peeve of the draft.
Yes, sir.
Respect other people's elbow room. We're sitting at the table. You don't get 3 chairs and super spread out spot. You got to pay attention. We got 12 people. We all need room.
Boy, if I remember right, my inaugural experience with your draft last year was a little crowded last year on the deck.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
We're going to have to talk with Dijak, get some different setup a little bit.
We're going to have to, because last year I was not happy with that. I did not get the proper elbow room.
No. But that's why I just stand up.
Plus, it was a hot day last year.
It was stupid hot
and
last
we were
year.
out in the sun. There was a little bit of shade, I guess, that they put up. But, I mean, man, it was just not a very comfortable experience. Here's a pet peeve of mine.
Drink more.
Make it comfortable for everybody.
No.
Let's find a cool place, indoors preferably.
Yeah, we tried to do it. Yeah, we've done it in the garage before.
That'd be cool.
That worked, but he had the big deck now and the pool, so that's why we went out back.
He wanted to show off his big deck to everybody?
Yep. And then... So I'm gonna poop in the pool this year.
Is there a preferred type of? Do you like the potluck situation with most drafts? Some guys draft bar.
So
some guys draft at a bar and grill, so there's a set menu there. But if you're doing a home draft at somebody's house, a potluck is the way to go.
Yeah. So kind of what we do for ours is the guy who runs the house, he has a smoker. So this year we're going to do some briskets and some pork butts probably. So
that's what we did last year too, right?
We did chickens and pork butts. We're doing brisket. New add this menu.
Gotcha.
So everybody brings $5 to cover the cost of the meat, which is fair because briskets aren't cheap. Do that, plus you bring a side. So then everybody kind of coordinates. Derek's always going to bring a vegetable platter because his wife is going to make him. And he drops in the garbage can on the way by to the back.
That's a good idea.
So I like the potluck. It's more involvement, and that's what it's really about, is you have to be there, and it has to be involved. You can't be a wanker and show up and be like, nope, I didn't. I got a bag of Skittles. I'm good. Thank you.
That said, I do like to have my own snack, as I mentioned in the last segment, the cram session. I like to have my own that I can just grab there during the draft, as we're doing it, and I like to treat myself after each pick. So for me, that tends to go through almost an entire sleeve of Oreo cookies, depending on the size of the draft. But, come draft season, I'm putting down a lot more sugar and a lot more calories than I normally do. I'm not going to complain about barbecue, though, Brian. That's a great, great thing right there. So,
It's beautiful.
yeah, no question. What else, my friend? We got a couple minutes left here to.
What else makes me mad on draft day?
Oh, you want to talk about more of that, huh? No,
Yeah.
nothing off the top of your head that's going on in your life or what's going on in the world.
No.
It's probably not enough time for any of that stuff.
No. Yeah, we need another show.
Yeah.
Call of Duty World War II beta is this weekend, so I'm pretty excited about that.
That's very, very cool.
So in between getting smashed at the draft and having to hang out with kids, I'm probably going to play Call of Duty from like 4 to 5 a.m.
I've got a fantasy draft with Brian and friends on Saturday, and Saturday evening I'm attending a show downtown.
That's terrible.
One of my favorite bands,
Terrible.
Blue October, is playing here in Des Moines, and I am very excited to see them again. I love that band. If you've never listened to Blue October music, that is something you should do. Every week I should give a new band people should listen to. Blue October's not new, by the way. They've been around for over 15 years, but maybe new to you if you've never listened. Listen, this was a fun show today, including our very special guest, Mr. Biff Hammer. Really appreciate him taking some time to guest on the program this week. As you head into your drafts, we wish you the best of luck. Hopefully we've done all we can here to help prepare you for a championship season. We'll be with you all along the way. Thank you so much for listening. For Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio.